Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tips, tools, and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. Welcome back, everyone. Today I have guest Thea Willette. Thea is a meditation instructor and quantum touch practitioner who works with women on a variety of concerns, including fertility, pregnancy, miscarriage, labor, delivery, and postpartum. She teaches meditation and energy healing to boost wellness so women can heal, move through unprocessed emotions, and be more present in their motherhood journey. Welcome, Thea. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So you and I are going to get to the root of infertility today. We're going to talk about unprocessed emotions and conception and miscarriages and postpartum and all of these topics that are kind of hard to talk about, right? And so globally, 48.5 million couples experience infertility. An estimated 15% of couples will have trouble conceiving. So Thea, why do you think there are so many difficulties for women to conceive?
I think there's so many reasons, but I think the biggest one is we've lost that connection with our body. And because we've lost that connection, we're kind of like floating in the wind. And then there's so many things that could go wrong. So, even in our environment, the food quality might not be ideal. Many toxins or chemicals in our environment, in our home products, in our air, our relationships. Maybe we're not having the relationships we're meant to be having. Maybe we're not getting that support that we need in our relationships. Our emotions, we don't know how to deal with our emotions or feel our emotions, or let alone work through our emotions. So that just gets stored in our body too. And when we lose this connection with ourselves, it's like then we lose our ability to be guided by our body and to like tune in with our body and to know those steps. So I think, and at least this is definitely speaking for myself, my own fertility journey was my invitation to actually connect with my body. Because before I tried to get pregnant, I just assumed I was my body, right? Or it's like I don't even know what my idea of my body was. I didn't even consider it. And it really wasn't until I was wanting to get pregnant that I had to get more curious about my body and understand how it worked. And I think that's just the journey we go through. And then when we get to that fertility, it's essentially what nature is saying is what's going on now is not going to help you become a mom, let alone raise a child. So I know it can be so easy to fall into this idea of like, why me, or like not understanding it. But I think that can take us down an approach, or that can bring us into a space that's not going to be helpful.
Absolutely.
Essentially, it's this invitation to get honest with ourselves, to tune into our bodies, and to go from there.
Yeah. And so it's like literally stripping away layers to an onion when we're looking at this. And I know I've worked with several clients who have struggled with fertility and moving through some of those stored, unprocessed, or trapped emotions that we talk about. And just kind of peeling away the layers. And I'm glad that you brought up the physical aspects as well, the toxins and the things that we're ingesting. And I noticed this, I don't have children, but I would notice this with my pregnant mom friends. They would eat like terrible. And then the moment they got pregnant, they became super healthy. And then they would give their kids super healthy food, but they would eat terribly. And I'm like, you're the vessel that's carrying this child, And so I do think it's a lifestyle that we have to look at as well. When we are trying to conceive, right? It's like you want to be healthy. And then I know I look back at my 20s and I didn't know when my cycle was coming. I just kind of was like,
Mhm.
oh, here it is, and I think part of
Mhm.
that too is when you start looking to conceive, you start actually following your cycle. And that
Mhm.
too in itself is tuning into your body, right? Like what is my cycle length? When am I ovulating? How does it feel when I'm ovulating? What does it feel like when I start to get my
Mhm.
cycle? And, I'm in my mid 40s and I still have a perfect cycle. I know exactly when I'm ovulating. I can feel it. I know exactly when, my cycle is coming and very, very close. And I know there's a lot
Mhm.
of women who can't say that. They
Mhm.
say, I don't really know when it's coming. And so, what are some blocked or trapped emotions, Thea, that you've recognized working with women that may cause them or block them from getting pregnant that you've noticed specifically that come up?
Yeah, well, the biggest one is anger.
Mhm.
Like, we don't know how to feel or express our anger. And when we don't move through it, so emotions is energy and motion. So all energy, like energy can't be created or destroyed. It can just be transformed. And if we don't know how to move those emotions through our body, they're just going to hang out there. And for women, most times they just kind of settle in our pelvis. And I mean, this takes me back to my days. So before I got into this work, I was working as an ultrasound technologist and I worked at a clinic. We did OB-GYN ultrasounds and I worked with fertility as well. So I would scan pelvic women ultrasounds. And most times their concern for their ultrasound was pelvic pain. And I would look everywhere. I would search their uterus, their ovaries, trying to find anything that would explain this pain that they're experiencing. And most times I couldn't. Most times I couldn't find a physical reason for their pain. But I mean, you look at them and visibly they're in pain. You can feel that emotion coming off of them. And now I know that. It was like I could sense it, but I didn't understand it. But when we become aware of our emotions, it all makes sense. And I always felt for these women because they would go back to their doctors and the doctors would say, oh, it's normal, normal, no reason for your pain. But like there is.
Yeah.
And it can grow and it can be stored there. And learning just to feel our anger. I think knowing that anger isn't good, it's not negative or positive. It just is energy. And we can move it through us. It's how we use that anger could be positive or negative, right? If
Yeah.
we're directing that at somebody, that might not be wise. Or if we're holding that into our body, that's not good. But if we can think about the last time you were angry, that's a lot of energy. Like you
It
can
is.
use that burst to put it towards something. So just learning how to use it, right? And then think about all that energy. Now that's not trapped in your body.
Mhm.
So it's like this weight gets lifted off of you when you learn how to move your anger. And I mean, for me, that was getting pregnant with my daughter. We, I was on my fertility journey. I already had 2 kids. I had had 3 miscarriages. I made several lifestyle changes. I started learning about energy work, about meditation and breathing, and we still weren't getting pregnant. And I wasn't even getting my period at that point. And that was when I worked with a practitioner. We went deeper and it was like, what are the emotions that are attached to this? And we found some buried anger. And when I was able to bring that up, there's steps that we work through to be able to acknowledge our anger and then allow ourselves to feel it and be safe in our bodies as we feel this anger and then move it through so that we can feel gratitude and self-love and then just this overwhelming love. So essentially we're transforming that anger and that energy out. So now it's usable energy. And the next month I got my period and 2
Wow.
months after that, we got pregnant with our daughter.
That's amazing.
So this stuff is powerful. Like there wasn't any other clinical reasons why we weren't getting pregnant. It was just keep trying. Maybe we'll try medication. But it was like, no, I knew there had to be something. There was something else.
Deeper. And yeah, I did a show on how anger is the misunderstood emotion. And like you said, it's not good nor bad. It's neutral. It's just a matter of transmuting that energy because
Mm-hmm.
energy is neither created nor destroyed. It's just transformed. Right. And so, oftentimes our sacral chakra, which is our reproductive area, that's a powerful area, right? That's orange in color. Think of fire, and fire and anger and, creation. And there's so much power in that area. And when I've worked with women who have struggled too, I know another trapped emotion that has come up is lack of self-worth. And I'm not deserving to be a mom, or I'm not worthy of being a mother, or, having those particular emotions come up and having those be trapped. And even going back to different emotions, when you have intercourse with anyone, those emotions, their emotions, get trapped into your womb, get trapped into your uterus, your sacral chakra, your reproductive area. And so oftentimes, I've shared this with women, is that, the partners that you've had throughout your life, oftentimes us as empathic women, we will carry those emotions, and those emotions could be stored emotions from our partners. Right. And so, and I've noticed that with my, my loving long-term partners, it's like, I would have a very healthy reproductive system, and then he would be going through something, and then we would have intercourse, and then I would get a cyst, and I'm like, that's not mine, So it's very interesting how these emotional, energetic, aspects of our body can present themselves in our physical aspects of our body. Right. And I know you and I working with, like I said, I don't work with a ton of women on these subjects, but I have, and these are some of the things that have come up. And so I want to talk about the nervous system, Thea, and how important that is, because that was one of the things you had mentioned to me. And I know I work a lot with that, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. So let's talk about that as well, because when it comes to, conceiving, you want to be relaxed, right? And if you're in a state of fight, flight, or freeze, it makes it hard. So what can you share about the importance of having a balanced nervous system?
Well, and this comes back to connection, because I think a lot of us are just living in our sympathetic nervous system, and maybe we don't even realize it. And we're constantly on that stress cycle, which, I mean, when you're in that state, the last thing your body's going to do is reproduce, because your body senses it's not safe to have a child. So it's not going to. So it's learning how to bring our bodies back into that parasympathetic nervous state, that restful state. And simple breathing techniques works wonders to bring ourselves back, like 4 good breaths, and you can be back into that calm state. And then this is where a daily practice really helps, because if you can practice this daily, then that now becomes a habit you can use in your day-to-day when you are feeling stressed or triggered, or when you start to notice maybe a tightening or contraction or any sort of symptom in your body. Now you can just take a moment, place your hand over that part of your body, and just tune into your breath. And this is such a simple skill, and it's so effective. And this is what I love about the work I do. Not only is it going to help you get pregnant, it's going to help you to have a healthy pregnancy, help you to have an intentional delivery, and help you to be there when your child is born and have that connection postpartum. And then you would have learned so much about yourself and the relationship with yourself and your body and your baby. And then you can ask for the help that you need postpartum. And it kind of takes you on this whole journey. And it really is just tuning into your breath. And back to the nervous system, I am learning more and more about the nervous system each day, because I always want to know, how is the energy moving through our body? I talk about the energy, and it goes through our body. And, I think the nervous system is key. And learning absolutely, there are times when your sympathetic nervous system, you need that because you need to get through whatever threat or challenge you're facing. But then you need to know how to come back and calm your body.
Absolutely. And it's important for dad to do this as well, right? Or the both partners, I guess, depending on which gender these days, but both partners to be relaxed. And it reminds me of the analogy. Okay, so remember that old game Operation? It was where you would go in with the tweezers and you would try to pull out the organ without getting zapped, right? If you were in a state of stress and you're shaking and you're like, oh, I'm trying to get that heart out of there without getting zapped, your odds are you're probably going to get zapped because you're shaking You're stressed. Well, if you're in a state of relaxation and you just are like, I got this, and boom, I pull that out, no zapping. It's similar to, I'm seeing a visualization of the sperm trying to connect with the egg, right? So when you're in a state of stress and panic, the poor little sperm is like, oh, I can't get there. I can't do it. But when you're in a state of relaxation, you're in a state of flow. And that little sperm can just naturally, whoop, boop, there we are, found the egg. Everybody's chilled, everybody's relaxed. And so, when you're looking at, you're in a state of stress, you're in a state of restriction, in a state of tension, right? But when you're relaxed, everything is, you open up your energetic system, you become bigger, you create more space in your body, right? And so it allows for that much more fluidity, that flow to take place. And when you're thinking of conceiving, those are the things you want, right? You want a good river flowing, right?
And I mean,
on both sides.
because there's so much about trying to get pregnant these days that keeps us in the sympathetic. Even simply using the phrase "trying to get pregnant," like just saying that is stressful.
Like it's out there.
And when we were trying to get pregnant with our first, it wasn't working, and like we hit that year, and we had the miscarriage in there, and it was stressful. And then we just had to completely back off. We had to be like, you know what? We lost sense of who we are. Like, who are we? Who are we ourselves? Who are we as a couple? And I had to stop tracking my cycle. I had to stop doing all the things of like always thinking about like, will this food help me get pregnant? Will this yoga practice help me get pregnant? Will this, like I'm day 12, like, am I going to ovulate today or tomorrow? Did that pain feel like an ovulation? Like constantly micromanaging. I had to like get rid of all of that and just have fun. And that's what we had to do. And this is where it's so touchy, because the last thing somebody trying to get pregnant wants to hear is just relax. But the truth is, you have to be able to bring yourself back into that rest space. It's so, so crucial. And for me, it was the breath. The breath brought me back. It brought me back to that present moment, to like what really matters here. And it was just to find that joy.
Yeah. And using meditation too, to visualize yourself pregnant. I deal a lot with law of attraction and manifesting, and you want to visualize yourself it's your outcome. You want to visualize yourself not in this state of stress and the inability to conceive, but in a beautiful environment of you birthing your child and you holding your newborn and you being a mom and raising a child. And let's dive into a little bit about miscarriages, though. You just mentioned that you had gone through one yourself, and I've worked with a few clients who have as well. And there's stored emotions that come with miscarriages prior to having a miscarriage, as well as during and after the miscarriage. So let's talk a little bit about that as well, Thea, and some of those unprocessed emotions that may come up during that time.
Yeah. And my biggest thing is just give yourself the space to feel what you're feeling, because there's so much. And I think it's just honoring that space that you're in. When we had our first miscarriage, at that point, I had been working at this clinic, and I mean, we scanned miscarriages. Somebody had scanned a miscarriage that day, like every day kind of thing. Like miscarriages are common, especially at a fertility clinic, because that's what you're doing. So I just didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, I had a miscarriage, and just like everybody else, like I didn't even allow myself to feel it. And it wasn't until like maybe like the months go on, and 8 months later, like the weight of that, of not even acknowledging it. And even then, between our first and our second, we had 2 more miscarriages. And once again, not allowing myself that space to really talk about it and feel it. And it's such a silent grief, because it's such a personal thing. And depending how early it happened, most times you hadn't even told anybody.
Exactly.
So now first of all, it's hard to say that somebody you love died. But then to say, I had this person and they died, like it makes it so much harder, because you now have to explain it. And when you're in that, you don't want to have to explain. You just want to be witnessed. Right. And the fact that we don't talk about this as a culture just makes it so much harder. So really giving yourself that space to honor what you're feeling, because there's going to be anger and guilt and shame, and really just allowing yourself to feel into that and then move through it, because blaming yourself isn't going to help you. But feeling it, like, and this is where working with somebody really helps, because normally there's something underneath that is making you hold on to that.
Always is something underneath.
And getting to the root of that is, I mean, you're honoring your space and allowing yourself to be completely honest. And this is where community helps to help us see that. Yeah. And then possibly adopting some sort of spiritual belief, right? Understanding what was the connection you had with your child? How can you continue that connection? I mean, because energy can't be destroyed. So they're with us in this dimension and they're still with us. And I mean, even myself, like I continue to make these connections and it blows my mind. And I just had an experience about a month ago where I actually connected with my first miscarriage, and she came through so easily. And that surprised me, because it was like, I knew it was possible, but I didn't think it was possible for me, even though I do the work that I do, until finally a mentor was like, no, Thea, you need to connect with her. I was like, okay. And she came through so easily, and she had such love to give to me, which I thought was beautiful. And it gave me this, I don't want to say closure, but maybe like completion or peace about the situation. And I can look back now. So she would have been 9 this spring had she been born. So over this 9.5 years that I would have been pregnant with her and had her, I see so many signs that she was there all along. So I do believe that they're still trying to connect with us. And this is the other thing. Every day you have a child, you get to love that child. And we have this idea that we can control how long our kids are going to live. And I think we need to appreciate that we can't, right? That some things are out of our control. Absolutely, we're going to be responsible for our children, and we're going to care for them, and we're going to provide for them, and we're going to keep them safe. But like, we can't control if they miscarry at 4 weeks, or if they die as a young adult, or anywhere in between, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's just appreciating life, and that every day we have our child, we get to love them. And that's what I tell a lot of because I get a lot of clients who have miscarried and then get pregnant again. And now they're scared to love their child because they don't want to get attached in case they're going to lose their child. But they are already connected to their child. And each day is another day to love them. And you know what? That really helps them get through those days, because quite often they might be experiencing bleeding in the beginning and it scares them, or any sort of ache or pain in their body and it scares them. And really to move out of that state of fear and into that state of love.
Yeah. And that's a huge one. I was going to say that's one of the emotions that always comes up when I'm working with women who've had miscarriages, is fear of what the future may bring, fear of the responsibility of having a baby, or even fear that the timing is wrong too, you know? And so when we look at our emotions, when we look at energy, we look at vibration and frequency, and our emotions all hold a certain vibration and frequency. Fear is a much more drawn out. If you look at a wave, fear is very drawn out like a wave. Joy is very fast. It's like very rapid. And so when you're in a state of fear, that's why when you go through something fearful, it's like, oh, it feels drawn out, but it all feels compacted, but it feels very drawn out when it happens. And so when you're holding yourself in that state of fear, you're holding yourself in a lower frequency. And when these children are coming in from the other dimensions, they're coming in, they're holding a very high frequency. And so if your physical body or your physical vessel isn't at the frequency that child is coming in at, then it's naturally not going to align. And so it's almost like you're just bouncing them, right out. The child, it gets the egg, it gets conceived, and then the child's in the body and it's like, I can't hold this frequency. I can't hold this dense frequency any longer. So the best thing you can do as mom and dad is raise your vibration, right?
Yes.
Like you said, be in a state of joy, be in a state of excitement, be in a state of happiness, release the unprocessed emotions of fear, of anger, of resentment, bitterness, whatever you may be holding that could be holding those denser, heavier emotions,
Yeah.
and you will have a much more smooth pregnancy. You will have a much more smooth conception, and then also a smooth birth as well, you know? So just,
I love how you just said that, because that's actually my experience with my second. So we had a miscarriage, and then we had my first, and then we were trying for the second, and we had 2 miscarriages. And when I tried to connect with them, it was my son who had come through. So I couldn't connect with them. And then my daughter from my first miscarriage was like, no, like that was Nathan. That was the other kid. I was like, oh. And I had thought that, but I needed to clarify it. But you're right. They come in, and they're coming in at a higher frequency, and we need to match that. So I had miscarried him it was 10 weeks. And then the next one was at 5 weeks. And then that was when I had started fertility treatment, and I couldn't do it. It felt very suppressive and controlling, and I just couldn't handle it emotionally or mentally. And so we just stopped everything. And it was just this knowing. I was like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And that was what led me down a series of synchronicities of changing my lifestyle. And then within that first month of like making a drastic change, we got pregnant with him. And that pregnancy was so smooth. And we had a natural home delivery. And yeah, it's so true.
it is. And I think, just sometimes that happens to tell you, all right, I've got to take better care of myself. How do I raise my frequency? I eat healthier. I relax. I get present in my body. Maybe I start a meditation practice regularly. I calm my nervous system. I visualize myself as a healthy mom, having a healthy pregnancy, a healthy delivery, a healthy child, just really being present in the moment versus living in a state of fear, right? A state of fear and restriction. And, if you haven't processed the emotions from your miscarriage and now you're trying to conceive again, it just makes it more difficult. So work on processing the emotions of the miscarriage. Or maybe you had a difficult birth on your first or second child, and now you're terrified that you're going to have a difficult birth on your next child. Work on processing those emotions, because it's all trauma, and that trauma gets stored in our body. Oftentimes it's stored in our sacral area, right? Because that's our center of creation. And so if you can heal the womb, and this isn't just physically healing, this is healing on an energetic and emotional level as well. And just really diving into that. It's like just even like a relationship, you go through a terrible breakup and then you're just bouncing off to the next person. What are you doing? You're picking up your baggage from that relationship and then dumping it in that new person's lap, So it's very similar to having a child and conceiving. You want to be able to process those emotions and move through them. So you are in a higher vibration and a higher frequency. And so, Thea, are there any other tips, tools, techniques that you can share with women, or men too? There might be dads watching out there too, that who can, any tips, tools that you can share throughout the various stages of pregnancy and motherhood?
Well, I think this is where I think we need to change our whole perspective. Right? The goal shouldn't be just getting pregnant. The goal should be like raising a well-adjusted adult.
Yes.
So, and then that encompasses, because I think one of the issues is it's like, okay, the goal is to get pregnant. And then it's like, oh gosh, we're pregnant. Okay, we got to be. And then there's like the stress to stay pregnant. And then there's like this labor and delivery, like, and it just seems like everything seems to be a hurdle. But if you make the goal a little further out, it kind of gives you more of like a smoother view almost, and you start to pick up the tips and techniques and just that frequency that you're going to need to continue. Because I think one reason why postpartum can be so hard is because we don't prepare for it. The goal is always to get pregnant. And then we think once we're pregnant, that's the easy part, right? Or we think once we get through delivery, that's the easy part. But it's like, the challenges just keep growing. So I think this is where it's like, let's change the perspective to having like beautiful communities of like well-established adults, and we are going to mother them and bring that in to fruition. So let's make that the goal. And then let's bring in a meditation or a breathwork technique that we can use to regulate ourselves through each step. Because the same technique you're going to use to calm your nervous system to help you get pregnant is the same technique you're going to use to be present and enjoy your pregnancy, and to be present and intentional with your delivery, and then to be able to meet the needs of your newborn. And the same techniques that I learned myself to get pregnant and to move through my pregnancies are the same ones I'm using now as I'm navigating homeschooling my kids. So simple breath work.
Children those tools too.
And you know what? They already know. Like, I don't have to even like teach them. They say stuff and I'm like, oh yeah. Like, I think they intuitively know this. So, I mean, that's been the beautiful thing. I've loved just observing my kids and seeing what they do, because I mean, my daughter hops and skips all the time. And I was like, you know what? I think I'd be a lot happier if I hopped and skipped every fourth step.
You're moving energy out. I was just watching a Qigong practice and he was hopping and skipping. And I'm like, really? Kids naturally know how to move energy. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're calling that the quantum hop.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
But anyways, back to the breath work. Just a simple 4-count breath. Inhale for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4. Feel your body expand on your inhale, soften on your exhale. You do 5 rounds of that, you're calm now, like you're present in your body. You got yourself into that
tapping. I am calm.
Yes.
I am safe during your breath work. Yeah.
Yeah. I love tapping the thymus right here. That really helps if I'm really feeling dysregulated.
Yes.
And I notice that with my kids too. They'll do it too. Or if I notice they're getting really anxious, then I'll just like one hand on their back and just like, but yeah, tapping. I think that helps us to physically ground into our bodies.
Let's talk about that too, because you are a quantum touch practitioner. Let's talk about the healing benefits of touch and how important that is, because I do feel as a society, we've gotten very disconnected or very misguided, right, through the porn industry on what touch really is about healing touch specifically. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So with quantum touch, it's an energy healing modality. And the principles are very simple. Breath, we bring in life force energy with our breaths as a practitioner. And then it's attention. So you're putting your hands on their body, and then the attention, and then with your intention, that's where the energy is going to go. So we're bringing the attention into our body to amplify the life force energy. And then with our intention, we're placing our hands on our clients and intending for their greatest and highest good and for healing in that space. And I mean, the beauty with the evolution of consciousness and just of this work, most of it is done virtually now. And it still works the same.
You can feel it. You can totally
feel it. Yes. Yeah. In person is still, it's beautiful. But just accessibility, it's so much easier to do a virtual and have that available to you.
Yeah, it's like little things like me that remind me of that motherly instinct. Is my mom used to play with my hair all the time. And so that's very calming and comforting to me. It's just, someone just kind of brushing their hands through my hair. And I'm like, oh, this feels like I go get my hair done. And I'm like, can you do it longer? Like, it just feels so
beautiful. Yeah.
There's things that bring you back to those moments when you were a child that feel comforting to you through touch, right? And just simple things like maybe your mom just used to rub your shoulders or your back, like you just said with your son, just tapping the back or just rubbing circles on your child's back. Those are things that calm the vagus nerve, that cause a sense of rest and digest. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and just getting back into that state, right? Just simple things to touch, right?
Well, and even as a new time mom, you're encouraged to do skin to skin with your child, which is simple skin to skin. And you feel that, and it's so good for your hormones. It releases the oxytocin, puts us into this, peaceful state, and it helps regulate the blood and the temperature and all those good things. And that, I mean, we would do that every day and we loved it. And my husband would do it too. And it really, so I had done that because that's what you're encouraged to do as a young mom, which I love. That is so helpful. So then when I learned quantum touch, I was like, oh, this is that feeling I would get when I would do skin to skin. because you're always breathing. You have this love for your child and you're feeling that, and your attention is so in that present moment, right? And of course, you're thinking about how much you love your child and you want the best for your child, and you're putting in all these beautiful intentions of what you want and the outcome. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And so let's flip the script a little bit. Let's talk about postpartum for those moms that don't feel the love of holding their baby, or they're feeling this, I'm not feeling the connection right now. You know, you work with women who have struggled with that as well. And what are some of the trapped emotions you may have found that come in play when it comes to postpartum?
You know, I think it is all a mirror of our inner child trauma, honestly, because with my first, I had a lot. And I remember saying this to one of my close girlfriends. I'm like, I don't feel like I connect with my child. Like, I look at him, but I don't feel like I have that connection. And she's like, oh, of course you do. Of course you do. You're a great mom. And I'm like, well, yeah, but like, so then as I had learned these breathing techniques and quantum touch and learning to connect with myself, and now I can connect with my child. So now when I have those moments where I feel that disconnect with my child, then it's like, okay, what do I need to process here? And then I kind of check in with myself and I do these breathing techniques. And then it's like I can create that connection with myself, and then I can create that connection with my child, because I can't love my child any more than I love myself.
Yeah.
So when I notice, and I think this is all of our challenges and circumstances, they have a message for us if we want to receive it, right? So when we notice that disconnection or that issue with our child, then it's an invitation to go deeper with ourselves.
Totally.
And it doesn't have to be scary, and it doesn't have to be extravagant. It just has to be a couple simple breaths of being honest, and you'll be surprised what comes up.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too, you know, when you birth a child, you go through a lot of stress, right? And a lot of trauma potentially, you know, and so you might need a little self-care after that. You do need some self-care after that. If your cup is empty and now you have a small child who is trying to drink from an empty cup, there's nothing that you can give. So there might be that moment where you say, you know, hey, whoever's, you know, significant other, mom, dad, who's ever there, please take care of the baby for a little bit so I can give myself some self-care, because I just went through a significant amount of energy transference, you know, by giving birth to this child. And so just looking at things like that, looking at your mineral deficiencies, you know, after you've lost a lot of fluids after you have a child, making sure that you have the correct amount of minerals. And those are reasons, you know, because you're like you talked about, oxytocin, serotonin, you know, dopamine, all of those can be depleted during childbirth because, you know, and those are the things that make you feel good. Those are the love chemicals, right? And so if you're feeling a disconnect with your child, oftentimes it could be because you've lowered some of those neuroreceptors, you know, and you've just got to build that back up again and get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm back to myself, because it's pretty strenuous, you know, going through childbirth, whether it's your first one or your 10th one, you know, it's just, it can take a lot out of you.
Well, and there's all the emotions that come with childbirth, right? If you didn't have a birth that you felt seen in, or you felt, right? It's whatever you feel about your birth, absolutely, that's going to carry over if you don't work through that and allow yourself to feel what you felt in those moments.
Yeah. And I work a lot with the emotion code, where we go back even prior to conception. And because even as a baby, that's traumatic for us to pop out of mom's, you know, birth canal and, you know, and then to be, you're all warm and cozy in there. And then now someone's spanking you on the rear, and then you're like in this cold environment. And, you know, she got to think, even as a child, the amount of stored or unprocessed emotions that we have, that we go through. And then your baby's experiencing that too. So it's so beneficial not only to help move your stored emotions out, but to help your baby too, because that way they can, you know, be a much more relaxed child as well. Because like you said, they're mirrors of us. So if your child is crying all the time, or stressed out, or not eating properly, or having a struggle, take a look at you and your you know, caretakers around you. What's the energy that you're putting off? Are you fearful? Are you stressed out? Are you freaked out, you know, about what's going to happen? your child's picking up on that. They are so in tune to the energy around them, and they can't verbalize it other than through crying or coughing or, whatever they're trying to get out, throwing a fit, whatever it may be. So a lot of it too is if your child is struggling, take a look back at yourself and say, gosh, what energy am I really sending out here? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's powerful. So, Thea, can you share a little bit about some of the services that you provide and how people can connect with you if they're going through some of these struggles in their life?
Absolutely. Yes. So I have a couple. So I work one-on-one with women because a lot of this gets really personal and it is individual to their circumstances, because sometimes it is their journey, it is their child work, that is them as babies, or maybe even preconception of their own spirit, right? There's so much there that you pick up, and it's all about the stored trauma. So we can notice where we have been disconnected from ourselves in those moments, and then how that's playing out in our present reality. So one-on-one work is really helpful. And we like to do a couple of sessions to create that momentum. As well, I teach quantum touch. So I do the energy boost mini class, which is like kind of a mini teaser into how we can use our breath for self-healing, which is fabulous. It's just a quick 2-hour, like everyone learns this within an hour. We're all capable of this work, which is really fun. And then I do the full 14-hour workshop. So that's a full level 1 quantum touch workshop where we learn 5 different breathing techniques. We learn how to use it throughout the body. We learn how to bring in the vibration of color, so chakras, and the vibration of sound and movement. And we can go through time, sending energy back to our past self and our inner child. So powerful. And that workshop is kind of a building block to become a practitioner yourself in quantum touch, if that's something that interests you. I mean, it's a great self-healing technique. And as a mom and as a future mom, like, this is going to be your game changer with children. It is for me. And then I have a group. So I have an app called Bloom by Thea Willette. So you can download it for free on your app store. So I have meditations there. So I have a 3-part meditation. So it's like a 3-day series to really feel in and cultivate your energy. I have a chakra guided meditation there. And then there is the group subscription where you get access to the weekly energy shares. So this is where the power really is, because you get to experience that energy healing every week with other women going through the same journey. And we really just get to surrender to this universal love, right? Surrender in this safe place to find healing.
Wow. So that's a lot of very valuable services that you share. So for those of you out there who may be struggling, you were obviously tuned into this program for a reason today, and you're watching it because maybe there was something within the topics that we discussed today. Please reach out to Thea, get some more information. If you still don't understand what unprocessed emotions are, or we talked about energy, frequency, vibration, and you still don't, you're still not there, it's okay. We can teach you. When we're working in the quantum, everything is in the now moment. And that's what's so amazing about it, is we can heal, like you said, our past and our future selves in this now moment when we're working in the quantum. And so there's nothing that we can't work through when we're working in the quantum field. So Thea, I appreciate you for coming on the show today, being vulnerable, sharing your stories about your miscarriage and your struggles with connecting, with your child. And these are things that, like you said, a lot of us don't talk about. It's a little taboo, right, in our society. So, I think by you and I opening up Pandora's box a little bit here and just sharing some of the difficulties that we've gone through, like I said, I've never birthed a child, but with that said, I'm a female and I've had my own set of difficulties in those areas. So thank you for the energy that you bring. And thank you for reaching out for me to be on the show. This is a very valuable topic today. So I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tanya. I'm so happy to share this work.
You deserve to navigate your life in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website, at www.theexistentialempath.com.